I'm Lisa, and for a long time, I thought my life was in perfect balance. I had a prestigious position as the head of marketing, a devoted husband named Ethan, and financial freedom. Paying our mortgage on my own made me feel accomplished, and family was at the heart of our lives. Ethan's younger brother, Brian, and their mother, Amy, were always around, and I admired the brothers' loyalty to Amy after their father's death. Initially, Amy seemed to accept me. During family events, she'd chat with me about my career, saying things like, "Marketing, huh? That sounds important." I felt included and welcomed. The early days were filled with happy weekends, holiday meals, and game nights. One Thanksgiving at Amy's house, the laughter and conversation made me feel like part of the family. But everything shifted one New Year's Eve. While I was topping off my wine glass in the kitchen, I overheard Amy mocking Julie, a single mom struggling financially. Amy made cruel comments about Julie's inexpensive dress, implying she didn't belong. It stung, not because the comments were directed at me, but because they revealed a side of Amy I hadn't seen before. What I once thought of as harmless teasing now felt deeply hurtful. These remarks became more frequent over time. Amy would whisper with Ethan and Brian, laughing at other people's expense. I started questioning the family dynamics I had once admired. The tipping point came one Easter when Amy openly criticized a relative's financial choices. Unable to stay quiet, I confronted her. The room fell still. Amy brushed off my concerns, calling me overly sensitive. When I turned to Ethan for support, he remained silent. After that, family gatherings became uncomfortable. I often found myself alone, watching as Ethan stayed close to his mother while I tried to participate in the festivities. Sometimes, he'd glance at me with a guilty look, but he never defended me. One evening after a tense dinner, I confronted him. "Why won't you stand up for me?" I asked, frustration evident in my voice. Ethan sighed, running his hand through his hair. "She's my mom, Lisa. What do you expect me to do?" "I expect you to stand by me," I replied firmly, but nothing changed. Gradually, I started avoiding family events, citing work emergencies or migraines to escape the judgment. Then, unexpectedly, I found out I was pregnant. When I saw the 2 lines on the test, I felt a mix of shock and excitement. I called for Ethan, who rushed in, his face a mixture of surprise and tentative relief. His reaction gave me hope that this pregnancy might mend the rift between us. However, the pregnancy wasn't easy. I suffered from constant nausea and dizziness, and the fear of a miscarriage loomed over me. My health declined, and I had to quit my job to rest. A rare complication worsened my eyesight, potentially permanently. Throughout it all, Ethan seemed to drift further away. He came home late or didn't come home at all, leaving me to face the challenges alone. When the day of my C-section arrived due to my worsening vision, I was filled with fear and anticipation. After the surgery, I asked for Ethan, but the nurse told me he had chosen to wait outside. The procedure went smoothly, and hearing my son's first cry was a magical moment. But the joy didn't last long. When Ethan eventually entered the recovery room, his face was clouded with discomfort. "Lisa, we need to talk. This isn't right," he said abruptly, criticizing my surgery, dismissing it as unnecessary, and complaining that men shouldn't be in the delivery room. His words cut deep. Before I could respond, he stormed out, muttering about how the hospital environment was too overwhelming for him. The weeks that followed were filled with sleepless nights and constant feedings. Ethan's presence became scarce, and when he was around, his lack of support was glaring. One night, as our baby cried uncontrollably, Ethan groaned from the bedroom. "Can you shut him up?" "I'm trying," I replied, exhaustion heavy in my voice. "He's teething. It's painful for him." Ethan's patience was non-existent. "All you care about is the baby. What about me? What about us?" His words left me stunned. Still recovering from surgery and barely getting by, his complaints felt like a harsh reminder of how distant we had become. As time passed, Ethan's dissatisfaction only grew. One evening, while I was comforting our 7-month-old, he told me, "You need to go back to work." I stared at him, shocked. "But the baby?" "We'll hire a nanny," he interrupted. "We can't keep living like this. We need the money." Though I wanted to argue that our son needed me and that I wasn't ready to leave him, the cold resolve in Ethan's eyes silenced me. With a heavy heart, I started looking for a job. Finding work with my deteriorating vision was challenging, but I eventually landed a position at a smaller company with lower pay. When I told Ethan, he scoffed. "That's it?" he said. "We're paying a nanny for this?" Tears welled up in my eyes. "I'm doing my best, Ethan. It's not easy with my eyesight." "Excuses," he muttered. walking away. This became my reality. Mornings were a blur of rushing to work while leaving our son with the nanny, and my evenings were filled with tension as I juggled work and motherhood. 3 years passed, each marked by the strain of balancing everything while the gap between Ethan and me grew. I loved my son, but family gatherings were increasingly uncomfortable, especially due to Amy's behavior. She would act like the doting grandmother when others were around, but her lack of interest was clear. "Come to Grandma," she would say, but my son clung to me, turning away from her. Amy's face soured, and she blamed me. "You're turning my grandson against me." I sighed. "He just doesn't know you well, Amy. If you visited more often." "Don't you dare blame this on me," she snapped, storming off to complain to Ethan. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, I discovered I was pregnant again. Holding the test in my trembling hands, I was overwhelmed with fear and uncertainty. My first pregnancy had been so difficult. Could I handle another? I called Ethan at work, my voice shaky as I told him. "Ethan, I'm pregnant again," I said. His response was dismissive. "Look, Lisa, I'm busy. We'll talk later. Just don't quit your job, okay? We can't afford that." The line went silent, leaving me staring at the phone, lonelier than ever. Thankfully, this pregnancy was easier, and I managed to keep working, but as my belly grew, so did the distance between Ethan and me. He spent more time at his mother's house, returning late. One evening, exhausted from caring for our toddler and carrying the new baby, I asked for help. "Can you read him a story? I'm so tired," I pleaded. Ethan glanced at us, then his watch. "Can't. I promised Mom I'd help move furniture. Don't wait up." And just like that, he was gone, leaving me alone with our son and my tears. By the 7th month of my pregnancy, Thanksgiving was approaching, and I couldn't help but wonder what would come next. The atmosphere in the house was filled with energy as guests trickled in. My parents were already there, making the place feel warm and welcoming. Just as we were getting ready for dinner, the doorbell rang again. This time, it was Brian, Ethan's younger brother, and he was accompanied by someone. "Everyone, meet Christine, Brian's fiancée," Ethan announced. The room buzzed with congratulations. Amy arrived soon after and immediately began chatting with Christine, curious about her job as a manager at a national bank. "Such an impressive position," Amy exclaimed, her eyes wide with admiration. "Christine earns $220,000 a year. Now, that's the kind of daughter-in-law I've always wanted, intelligent, beautiful, and successful." Then she turned her gaze toward me, raising her voice a bit more than necessary. "Unlike some of us who can only pop out babies and breed poverty." Her words struck me hard, like a slap. I fought back tears, forcing a smile, but my mother, sitting beside me, was visibly upset. I placed a hand on her arm to calm her. Amy, sensing the tension, leaned in closer. "Why don't we all go to that new restaurant downtown? My treat," she suggested sweetly. Before I could respond, she, Ethan, Brian, and Christine were already heading for the door. The cheerful atmosphere dissipated immediately. One by one, the remaining guests left with weak excuses. Only my parents stayed behind, their presence offering a slight comfort. I declined their help with the cleanup, telling them to rest. After they left, I collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming down my face. The house felt eerily silent, broken only by my sobs. My hand instinctively rested on my swollen belly as I tried to process everything that had just occurred. Hours later, I heard the front door creak open. Ethan stumbled in, reeking of alcohol and cigarettes. He didn't acknowledge me as he made his way straight to the bedroom. I picked up my phone, absent-mindedly scrolling through social media. Then, I saw it, a photo of Amy, Ethan, Brian, and Christine at a nightclub. The caption read, "Best Thanksgiving ever with my real family." As my due date approached, I focused on the baby's arrival, but the strain between Ethan and me was palpable. He seemed even more distant than usual. Just days before my scheduled C-section, I caught him unpacking bags full of summer clothes. "What's all this?" I asked, puzzled. "Just a sale," he muttered, avoiding my eyes. "Thought I'd freshen up my wardrobe." With the baby coming soon, I didn't press him further. I had been saving for bills, the mortgage, and even a sitter for our son. Thankfully, my job had approved 3 months of unpaid leave, but an unsettling feeling lingered in the air, and something didn't seem right. Then, 5 days before my C-section, chaos struck. Ethan and Amy burst into the house, urgency written all over their faces. Ethan started hastily packing the new clothes. "What's going on?" I asked, my panic rising. "We're all going to Brian's wedding in Hawaii," he said, tossing shirts into a suitcase. My C-section is in 5 days. Who's going to look after our son? You'll handle it. You always do, Ethan snapped, zipping up the suitcase. Before I could protest, they were out the door, leaving me stunned. I checked our joint bank account, empty. Every last dollar was gone. My hands shook as I dialed Ethan's number. Where's the money? I demanded. A brief silence followed before Ethan's cold laughter came through the phone. We needed it for Brian's wedding gift. Stop being so greedy, Lisa. Before I could respond, the line went dead. My panic escalated, the pain in my abdomen intensified, and I realized my water had broken. With my previous C-section, complications were a serious risk. I called for an ambulance. The hospital was a blur, doctors shouting, machines beeping. Hours later, I awoke to the sound of my mother's voice. She was holding my hand, tears on her face. Lisa, she whispered, you're okay, the baby's okay. I exhaled in relief, though exhaustion weighed heavily on me. The doctors said I was recovering well. Ethan hadn't called, not once. A day after I was cleared to leave, I still hadn't heard from him. A week later, Ethan finally called. I ignored the first 5 calls, but on the 6th, I answered. Where are you? Why aren't you home? He demanded, his voice angry and confused. I'm at my parents' house with our sons. I've filed for divorce. There was a long pause before he scoffed. Divorce? Are you serious? After everything I've done for you? His voice dripped with mockery. Everything you've done? I replied, struggling to stay calm. Like abandoning me before I gave birth? Like stealing our savings? You've always held me back. Ethan spat. Well, now I'm free. I'm going to be rich. He went on about a job offer from Christine, who had promised him wealth through some financial scheme. You never believed in me, Lisa, he yelled. I'm going to have everything I've ever dreamed of. And you? You'll just watch me succeed. The divorce was finalized quickly. Ethan didn't contest much, and the court ordered him to pay alimony. As I had taken on all the financial responsibilities, the judge awarded me the house. A few days later, I returned to the house, and Ethan was already packing his things. He sneered at me. Enjoy this dump while you can. I'll be living in a mansion soon. You'll see. As he left, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The house felt lighter, as if his presence had always been a burden. It was over. A year and a half later, life had settled into a routine. I managed work and motherhood. Things weren't always perfect, but I was content. Then, one day, a news alert popped up on my phone. Banker exposed as fraud. Leaves family in ruins. I stared at the headline in disbelief. Christine, the so-called financial expert, had orchestrated a massive scam. She had convinced Ethan, Brian, and Amy to invest in a fake company. They had even taken out loans to fund Brian and Christine's Hawaii wedding, the same one Ethan had left me for. Christine had never been a banker. The office she showed them was a rental, part of her scam. She had vanished with millions, leaving only destruction in her wake. Ethan, Brian, and Amy were left broke. Amy had lost everything, her home, her car, her belongings. I heard she had taken a job as a cashier just to survive. Then, my phone rang. It was Amy. Lisa, she said, her voice desperate. We need your help. The kids need their father and grandmother. You can't turn your back on family. I took a deep breath. The memories flooding back, being abandoned while pregnant, the theft of our savings, the humiliation. Family? I replied, my voice firm. You weren't concerned about family when you left me in danger. You weren't concerned about family when you helped steal my savings. You weren't concerned about family when you belittled me. Amy tried to interrupt, but I pressed on. I'm sorry for what you're going through, but I'm not responsible for your choices. My priority is my children, and I won't expose them to the instability you've created. I ended the call and blocked her number. As I set the phone down, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. It was finally, truly over.